The right to bear arms is not only my favorite constitutional right, it's the only constitutional right that I know of.
Hi there, friends. I was wrong about guns. I used to be pretty anti-gun. I'm a little embarrassed to say that. I thought they weren't necessary and we'd be better off without them. Like, please, government, just take our guns, disarm us. What an idiot I was. I even made this video back in 2017, pretty much making fun of people who were pro-guns. Watch this example of how ignorant I was.
Yes, I'm outraged. And emotionally outraged people are the ones that should have guns in their hands because we can think the clearest.
I was completely wrong, but I've changed my mind. I now view the Second Amendment as absolutely essential in upholding our freedoms and our liberty. I believe changing one's mind about something isn't a bad thing. I actually think it's a good thing. It's called learning, evolving your thinking, and accordingly, I like to admit when I was wrong. So I want to go through a few clips from my old anti-gun video and share how my thinking has evolved. And I'll also share a shocking fact about what happens when citizens allow their government to disarm them. So this isn't going to be so much of a comedy video. Thanks for the ride. Now it's a comedy video. No, this will be more of a I was wrong about guns and I love freedom, and the Second Amendment is vastly important at protecting our freedom, so here's what I learned video. So let's take a look.
Just think about it. What if we face a tyrannical government who turned against us using the military? We would need guns to form a militia to fight the oppressive government.
A tyrannical government? Well, that could never happen. I was wrong. Because it's happening. I mean, even outside of what's happening in the US, take a look at what's happening in Australia and Canada with the tyrannical regimes keeping people locked in their homes, taking people out of their homes to detain them, and putting people into camps. Do you think the tyrannical powers that be just don't want to go that far in the US? No, of course they do. There's just one minor difference. The U.S. population is armed. The Second Amendment is intended to allow citizens to protect themselves from a tyrannical government, but Australian and Canadian citizens have been disarmed, which means they don't have any inherent protection against the authoritarian government and what they're trying to do to those people right now. And how can the Chinese Communist Party abusively walk all over their citizens? Well, just like Australia and Canada, China disarmed their population a long time ago. Since making my old anti-gun video, I've since learned the Founding Fathers were wise enough and humble enough to know that humans are susceptible to being corrupted by power. That's why they had the foresight to empower future generations to protect themselves from people in the government who became corrupted by power. Protect themselves with the Second Amendment. Let's move on.
And because the military only has machine guns, tanks, fighter jets, missiles, and atomic bombs, it's sensible to assume that me owning a gun would prevent the oppressive government from taking control over me.
Well, let's see if Biden agrees.
Well, the tree of liberty is not water with the blood of patriots. What's happened is that there never been, if you wanted to think you need to have weapons to take on the government, you need F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons. The point is that there's always been the ability to rationally limit the type of weapon that can be owned and who can own it.
Trying to minimize the vast importance of the Second Amendment, Joe? Personally, I am very skeptical of any government with guns trying to take the guns of the citizens. And the Biden administration is trying to do just that. A government with guns trying to take your guns is the exact reason why the Founding Fathers gave us the right to own guns. Next!
Our constitutional rights are the most important thing in this world. In fact, they're more important than the world is.
Born out of my own ignorance, I thought it was silly and unnecessary to be concerned with our Constitution. It's like that old thing, like it's not going anywhere, don't worry about it. Do we really need to talk about it? But since then, as the current administration has absolutely walked all over every constitutional right of ours, I've snapped out of my ignorance and realized not only is the Constitution vastly important because it's what gives us freedom, but protecting it is just as important. So I've learned that protecting and preserving the Constitution is necessary in order to protect and preserve our lives as free, sovereign Americans.
The right to bear arms is not only my favorite constitutional right, it's the only constitutional right that I know of.
There's a quote from Dave Chappelle that says, "The First Amendment is first for a reason. And the Second Amendment is just in case the first one doesn't work out." Yep. Seeing what's happening today and throughout history has pretty much opened my eyes to realizing that all the other amendments pretty much hinge on the Second Amendment. Because without it, the other amendments can be taken away and citizens have no way of protecting themselves from the people trying to take away their rights. Look at my finger on the trigger. Now, this is a fake gun in the video. By the time I put the video out, the comment section was loaded with people just being like, "Hey, get your finger off the trigger, you nut job." I'm like, "You're a nut job." Now I get it. Even with a fake gun, proper trigger safety is damn important because you wouldn't want to enforce a bad habit which leads you to accidentally Alec Baldwinning someone.
I own a gun to protect me and my family.
Old JP thought owning a gun to protect your family was just a deceiving excuse to own a murder weapon. Wrong again, JP. Like, I have a family now. So now I very much understand that being able to protect your family is part of what makes you a true man, father, and husband, instead of relying on someone else to protect your family. Now, if you're like, "Well, JP, I'm not set up to protect my family, so what are you saying?" I'm saying you're not a real man. I think better to have a gun to protect your family and not need it than need a gun to protect your family and not have it.
I just use the gun that I keep on top of my safe.
Every night.
No, you look right over there at that one, honey.
Now, I'd like to point something out. How good is that accent I'm using? It's pretty good. I practiced it for like 30 seconds before I shot that video. And the reason why I use a southern accent in this gun video was to help portray gun owners as stupid, because there's a stereotype that people with a southern accent are stupid. Now, I know, Southerners, I know you're not stupid. I didn't invent the stereotype, I was just leveraging it. And now, after breaking out of my cocoon of firearms ignorance, not only have I realized that gun owners tend to be very smart people, but I've also realized that gun owners tend to be smarter than people who don't own guns, because gun owners are smart enough to own guns.
Every night when I walk in the front door from work, my man hysterically screams at me to identify myself while pointing a gun in my face. And I feel so protected with him and his guns around because I know he's keeping me safe.
Amber was just my fiance at the time. Now she's my wife. But I digress. Here what we're basically portraying is gun owners are reckless and unsafe with their guns. Wrong again, JP. Over the past couple of years that I've gotten into guns, I've been very impressed at the level of respect and devotion to gun safety that every single gun owner that I've encountered has. I consider getting proper gun training absolutely essential if you're going to be a first-time gun owner. I think owning a gun and not having proper training probably puts you in far more danger than the level of protection it gives you. Now, the first thing I did when I bought my gun was an immersion course on gun training with Sheepdog Response. If you're a first-time gun owner and have no idea where to begin, I highly recommend Sheepdog Response's Protector Level 1 program. As Spider-Man's uncle once said, "With great power comes great responsibility." Then his uncle died later that night. He might not have died if he had a gun on him. Just saying. Next,
Some countries that outlaw guns don't have mass public shootings.
we can remind ourselves that gun laws only affect law-abiding citizens, not criminals. Mass shooters are criminals. Criminals aren't like, "Well, I was going to murder someone with this gun, but I don't want to risk getting a gun possession charge to go along with my murder charge, so I'm not going to do it. I'll obey the gun law." If a potential mass shooter knew that everyone around him was armed, or her, you psychotic women, then he'd be pretty discouraged from opening fire. That's why very few mass shootings happen in Texas, because everybody knows that most people in Texas are carrying. In fact, last year in Texas, there was a crazy person walked into a church, opened fire, but he was quickly shot and killed by a man carrying his own gun. Consider this. Switzerland issues all of their citizens a gun, and the proper gun training to go with it. And that helps give Switzerland the lowest rate of gun crime out of any civilized country in the world. Let's bring this home.
Some countries that outlaw guns don't have mass public shootings, but they don't have real men in their countries neither.
Remember that whole guns are meant to protect you from a tyrannical government kind of thing? Well, anytime a government disarms their population, they always tell them, we're doing this for your protection. Sound like a familiar narrative? But what the government doesn't tell you is, now you won't be able to protect yourselves from us. I think we can either look at history and learn from it and do things better, or we can look at history and ignore it and repeat the same patterns. Something history teaches us is that any time a government takes away their people's guns, catastrophe follows. I wish this wasn't the case, but it's a true pattern in history. For example, consider these shocking historical facts about what happens when a government disarms their population. In 1911, Turkey established gun control. Then from 1915 to 1917, 1.5 million Armenians, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. In 1929, the Soviet Union established gun control. Then from 1923 to 1953, about 20 million dissidents, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. China established gun control in 1935. Then from 1948 to 1952, 20 million political dissidents, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. Germany established gun control in 1938. Then from 1939 to 1945, a total of 13 million Jews, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. Cambodia established gun control in 1956. Then from 1975 to 1977, 1 million educated people, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. Guatemala established gun control in 1964. Then from 1964 to 1981, 100,000 Mayan Indians, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. Uganda established gun control in 1970. Then from 1971 to 1979, 300,000 Christians, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. 56 million people were rounded up and exterminated in the 20th century because of gun control. It is essential for America to protect our Second Amendment. It's not a stretch to say that our current government is already enacting tyrannical mandates and eroding our freedoms. And the same administration wants to get our country to a point where the citizens are disarmed. We know history, and therefore we know it's important to stay armed. Again, consider Australia, Canada, China, and even North Korea. They have severe tyrannical rule and abuse because those societies are not armed. It is a pain in the ass for a government to violate people when people can defend themselves from being violated. Oh, and along those same lines, here's a fun fact. During World War II, Japan decided not to invade mainland America because they knew most Americans are armed. The current administration will shamelessly use any public shooting to try to persuade the public through fear-mongering and deception to think it would be a good idea for us to turn in our guns. But keeping history, and therefore the vast importance of the Second Amendment in mind, will probably serve us much better than keeping their propaganda in mind. History teaches us when a government tries to take your guns, that's the exact government you will soon need to protect yourself against. In conclusion, I forgive myself for being anti-gun for a while, but I really appreciate my willingness to learn and change my mind, and I'll be pro-gun. And the reason why I'm very pro-gun is because I'm very pro-freedom. History has taught us that demented people will eventually try to take your freedoms if you let them. But the Second Amendment allows you to protect yourself to keep your freedoms. Even though I can look at my past self that made this anti-gun video and think, you're an idiot. It's important to me to actually leave that video up online rather than deleting it, because I want people to be able to see the evolution in my thinking about guns and my willingness to change my mind. I'll leave you with this. Freedom is the very thing that makes life worth living, and the Second Amendment protects that gift. So that's what I think about guns, but what do you think about guns? Let me know in the comments. Have you changed your mind at all about guns in the past 2 years that the world has changed? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And in the meantime, stay free, my friends. One quick thing, my freedom-loving friend. I've just released some brand new ProGun Pro 2A merch designs available now in my merch shop. You can be one of the absolute first to grab these new designs that you see here. Just go to awakenwithjp.com. I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Primal Life Organics, and their LED light teeth whitening system. Here's a cool thing. Unlike most teeth whitening systems that use harmful peroxides, which can actually damage and denature your teeth while they're whitening your teeth, Primal Life Organics chooses the natural route. Primal Life Organics takes the higher road, utilizing an LED light mouthpiece along with food-grade teeth whitening gel. Blue light for whitening your teeth, red light for reducing inflammation, and both for doing both. Personally, I like to have white teeth as a part of how I present myself, but my problem's been finding a product that doesn't contain harmful things that I don't want to put into my body. But Primal Life Organics solves that problem. If you're a healthy-minded person, not only does it uphold your values because everything's natural, but it's very effective too at whitening your teeth. 16 minutes a day, 3 days a week helps keep the ugly away. If you want to join me in upgrading your smile by whitening your teeth with Primal Life Organics, just go to naturalteethwhiteners.com/JP. And when you use my link, you get a full 60% off your teeth whitening kit.